And welcome to another episode of Literary as Feck, the show where myself, Nicholas O'Shenanigans, and himself
Clive Davis.
talk about books and book-related things. And it's my choice this week, and so I have chosen a book by really my third favorite Welshman. I would say, if I had to choose two Welshmen that I, love more, they would be two that I've worked closely with in the past. Obviously, Tom Jones and Sir Anthony.
Right.
But after them, definitely I would say Arthur Machen is in the top three.
Real name Arthur Llewellyn Jones.
Yes.
Much more Welsh sounding.
Yeah, I don't know where the Machen comes from. If people know about him at all, and it's one of those weird things, like with Lord Dunsany as well. They often, modern readers, if they come to them at all, will come to them via H.P. Lovecraft, because these were two of the biggest influences on Lovecraft's style.
His dates are 1863 to 1947. And his size, I don't know. So.
And he's probably best known for a book which I really like, or I should say a novella called The Great God Pan. And I would say, I think Stephen King is on record famously as saying it's the most terrifying story ever written, and it's certainly up there. Like it's a really.
To be fair though, I think Stephen King's had that put on the cover of at least 8 million books.
This is true. I have seen The Future of Horror. I've seen The Past of Horror, and it is Arthur Machen.
Blurb whore, generous blurb whore Stephen King.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it is,
informative and terrifying. The phone book, Stephen King.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, anyway, I read that some years back and thought it was amazing. And I read, what is the one? It's not just called The White People, is it? Because that's but it might be.
I think it is actually called The White
People. I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was interested in reading a book that I had started some years ago, and then I got distracted from and didn't finish, and knew I wanted to go back and finish it. So this gave me an opportunity to go back and finish it. A book called The Secret Glory. A little bit of a later book for him, although strangely, like, it was written.
Yeah,
and then
it was actually written in 1907.
Yes,
and
but not
released
published
in 1922, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And written apparently in the period of life where he had lost his first wife and was quite emotionally low.
Also, I mean, were you reading? Because I grabbed like a very cheap Kindle edition. Is that what you grabbed as well?
Yes.
So we might be missing, because Tartarus Press put this out again in more recent years, apparently reinstating a couple of missing chapters. There's like chapters missing, but I don't know if they were in the version we read or not.
I'm not sure either. I just read that as well because I was reading some reviews of it. But interesting enough, most of the reviewers said you're actually better off with the one that was released back in 1922. You don't. There's nothing particularly.
Glad to hear you have read some of that, because for some reason I wasn't sure if because we've talked about Machen, but I don't think we've ever like directly swapped reading experiences. So I wasn't sure if it was someone on your radar and this was actually your first Machen or not. And
it was probably my third.
Oh, that's okay then, because it would be a slightly odd one.
Yes.
Or introductory Machen.
Yeah.
Even though it does share some of his obsessions, it's not exactly what he's known for, right?
Yeah, no, not at all. But I think maybe that's why, the first time I read it, why it grabbed me, because it really wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't as obviously horror filled or fantasy filled, that it was like those elements were they're there, but they're very subsumed in a fairly realistic narrative for the most part.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a sort of, it's Arthur Machen doing a sort of rites of passage book, right?
And maybe before we get into the story, I mean, a couple of things that I wonder if they weren't, I mean, I don't know if they're directly influenced, or if certain things are just if you write a story about the English public school experience, there are going to be certain commonalities, right? But I did see things in this that made me think of If, right? The Lindsay Anderson film, and then Penda's Fen in a weird way as well. More in that kind of young person gets
definitely
lost.
Penda's Fen, because Penda's Fen is very Machen Lovecraft sort of finding a subterranean endless world in your own backyard sort of thing, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I wondered if if they did a just so I don't know if I mean it's actually quite a hard book to just talk about the story, because it jumps around in time. It's also composed in some parts of like other people's recollections or like excerpts from this other person's book that references having seen our main character at this one point in his life.
Right, and I'm also not entirely sure by that. I mean, parts of the book kind of lost me in a way. In a way, which actually might be intentional.
I think it is. I very much think it's.
So I didn't worry about it because I thought it would all come together in the end. And in the end, I mean, I certainly got the.
It kind of does.
I got the measure of it enough, but also towards the end of the book, I wasn't. Our main character Ambrose Merrick, great name. I still wasn't quite like I got the feeling you were reading about like the early life of someone who went on to become notorious for some reason. I mean, but the reason why they were notorious never quite came to light for me. Like I know there's the very, very ending.
Yes.
But do you know what I mean? It seemed as if there was a missing bit, like between that ending and between his school days. I was like, so why are we talking about this guy? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's one of a few things I think that's left deliberately like obtuse or obfuscated, right? Like I mean, there was definitely moments. Like another thing I love. So basically, right, our story more or less begins with Ambrose being like at this public school, and I mean it's hard to, how old is he supposed to be? You think at the beginning, like 15 years old, maybe
something like that.
Yeah. And he's basically he's taken to wandering around and just enjoying old architecture, and he feels this sense of revulsion at the modern world and at modern architecture and stuff. This is something his dad is trying to.
He feels like a young M.R. James or something, doesn't he?
Yes.
That kind of antiquarian kind of.
And this is partly passed down from his dad, and his Welshness is definitely something that the book comes back to more than once.
Well, it's interesting. It's that Welshness, which, not knowing too much about Arthur Machen, but my sense of him, it's that kind of Welshness as well that comes from not being 100% growing up in a Welsh environment with a Welsh language around. It's that kind of slight longing for something he wishes he was slightly more
authentic,
or connected to.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, for sure. And is it interesting? Like, I wonder if somebody came to this via that kind of Lovecraft thing and was reading this for the first time and had no idea what the Welsh language was, if they wouldn't have been like, oh, it's more of this Cthulhu Fatan.
Yeah,
because it does break into Welsh occasionally, and that stuff was completely obviously lost on me. But in any case, so this he's been orphaned, kind of, right? It seems like his dad has died, and he was very close to his dad, who introduced him to this kind of Welsh mysticism, I guess, or this Celtic religion that seems strangely like a version of, it's a mashup kind of Christianity, or of this older Christianity with these even older pagan
and Grail stories.
That's what I'm thinking. The Grail features really clearly, which, I mean, the oldest stories of King Arthur are a kind of weird mashup of older, like the Green, like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is a much
much
older story, right?
Right.
Than Christianity, and then you've got
something they point out here as well is there's like there's the version from the British Isles, but there's also very much the Brittany French
Yes.
Side of those stories as well, right? And
yeah,
so this feels very even though it's only glimpses, there's no like explicit references to the Grail stories. It feels, the glimpses that you get of it, they feel like they're coming from someone who knows their stuff. I get the
yes.
fact that Arthur Machen probably knows that stuff inside out, right?
Yes, and I've read a couple of reviews where people who obviously maybe are much more tuned into this say that there's a whole bunch of elusive references to things that if you're in the know, you'll get. And was it A.H. White or whatever that he was, or Waite that he was really close to? Who was
A.H. White?
So yeah, who was a magical dude, right?
Yeah, well, I've only ever read the last of his Once and Future King books, which is kind of a bit of a revelation. You read that and you're like, oh, so this is basically where Terry Pratchett was born.
Right.
Is that last T.H. White Once and Future King, which from what I understand is quite different from his, I think it's the fourth one, like the earlier one was, but you read that and it is very much, it's proto Terry Pratchett. It's kind of amazingly so, in fact.
So young Ambrose basically it doesn't fit terribly well in this school. He's considered a kind of a funk, right? He's not really into sports. He's not really into school spirit, and the school is very single-mindedly focused on this. And his uncle, what is this name? Mr. Horbury, kind of seems to run. And he's a great character. I really enjoyed everything connected to him. But the story kind of begins with him savagely beating the young Ambrose,
crashing, doesn't he?
Yeah, in a fit of pique, basically, over he's had an unpleasant interaction with the headmaster or something of the school, and he's feeling a bit, indigestion, and he takes it out on the kid, and this kind of is the catalyst for much of what kind of ends up happening in the story.
It's a nice bit of, actually, that stuff is quite a nice bit of satire on the public school system, and it felt very believable to me.
Yeah, and angry. That's what when I first read it, and I was, I think I was in Mexico when I was reading it, but that just seemed to simmer with like a barely restrained rage, like the description of basically these weakling kids ending up committing suicide. Like, he makes no bones about it. He's like, no, these kids hanging themselves over being so mercilessly bullied, and then I'm sure it's great solace to their parents that we made a Lupton man out of him.
Right. There's just enough distance. Machen's got just enough distance to kind of, to kind of have a slightly arch kind of satirical.
Yes.
But no, you can tell there's a genuine, there's a genuine kind of indignation about the whole setup, right?
Yeah, and I love about Horbury is he's convinced he's going to basically inherit the headmaster position of the school. So he weaves his entire fantasy about making the world's most incredible public school, and how he's he just concocts all this stuff in his mind, these fantasy castles, and then it all comes to shit. And this is one of the things I wondered, because that's one of those great things where, did you get a clear sense of exactly what the rumor was, or it was? Was it just enough to know that some kind of salacious rumor was quietly spread about him?
They never spell it out, right?
Right. But I assumed by the end of the book, spoilers, that it was the maid, right, Nellie, who was instrumental in spreading that rumor, right? It was her revenge against him for having beaten up Ambrose, who obviously, as the book, we realize they have some sort of relationship, right, later in the book.
Right. I mean, I think that's how I read. I mean, like I said, some of the parts of the book kind of washed over me a little bit. It's interesting. I very much enjoyed reading this book. And it's a relatively short read as well. Although I do wonder if it is from what I've read I've read a couple of Machen novels now and a bunch of the short stories, or rather long short stories. They're more like novellas. I think that might be that seems to be his ideal length, is the long short story or novella.
Yes.
The couple of books like this that I read of his feel a little bit too long.
Right.
I'm wondering if his format of choice was the novella. I think that's where his best work might be. But it did make me want to read. So the other one, the other book of his, which is considered his masterpiece by lots of his fans, is The Hill of Dreams, right? Which has a lot in common with this, apparently. So I'm thinking I might read that next, because how can I say? There's parts of this book which are just a joy just to read his use of language. Like,
yes,
every now and again, there's a few passages which are just, they just jump out at you, like pure poetry, right? But then other times where that approach seems a little bit like gilding the lily, like it's not necessary. So it's a consistent read, I would say. Like, parts of it are really, really good. Other parts, it's never boring or unentertaining, but it's a little bit of a patchwork quilt of a novel. How did you?
I would agree. No, I would definitely agree. I mean, so I think some of the things I enjoyed most were just the rants.
Yeah,
it's a kind of, you know what I mean? It's quite a ranty book in some ways, whether it's about English manners or whether it's about middle class, social mores, or all of the mores, whatever the word is. Yeah, that stuff was all, obviously.
As a man who struggles to stick to a reasonable diet, I particularly enjoyed the whole thing about rallying against sober people and
yes,
how
which apparently
rivers of wine and we should just be inebriated the whole time, and the sober people these are the people who are building a horrible, boring industrial world, and all was like,
and I think apparently that was all very strongly held. He had no time for temperance or Puritanism or any of that stuff. And you can see, I mean, the culture, again, Celtic culture has always been a culture of mead and beer and wine and song, right?
You see why Marky Smith liked Arthur Machen.
Right, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. I don't have as much to say about the book maybe as I should.
I felt as well, actually, that I wouldn't have that much to say about it either. But it's definitely worth I mean, it's not entry level Arthur Machen, sure. Like you said, get that.
That's the Great God Pan, I think. If you want a place to start.
I can't remember if that's in that. So a few years ago, Penguin put out a collection, didn't they? I think that's.
I'm sure it's in there. Yeah.
I think there's a foreword by Guillermo del Toro, maybe, or someone like that.
Okay. And I know St. Joshi has done extensive notes for some
annotated ones. Yeah. But I think this was the more mass market, easy to find thing. But yeah, sometimes they use the older Joshi forwards, right? And sometimes maybe it's got both. I can't remember. I would imagine you just put the short Del Toro forward in there, so you can put that on the cover, and that's going to get more casual readers.
Yeah.
But yeah, you might be right. The Joshi stuff might be in there as well.
In there anyway, the notes at least.
Yeah. But I think if you get a taste for the Machen worldview, then this is kind of a piece of the puzzle which is worth. Like I said, it would be very interesting to compare it to The Hill of Dreams, which I think where I might head next. I'm also really interested in. Didn't he write 2 autobiographies as well?
Yes, I'd be really interested.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
A very interesting dude.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think it's funny, like we haven't actually on the show, we haven't really done very many writers from our neck of the woods. Like I don't think have we read anything by somebody Irish or anything by somebody Welsh up until now.
No, maybe not.
I don't think so. Yeah. So I did. That was part of me in the back of my mind was feeling like we were maybe overdue to do something a bit closer to home in that way. And in that way, the book did. Yeah, it really did speak to me. I wondered, like, 1907. I know it wasn't published till 22, but 1907 still seems early to me for a book this vitriolic about not just the school system, like that public school system and its abuses, but also really about the whole. It's just I mean, several years later, something like Keep the Aspidistra Flying by George Orwell is kind of similar, but actually in the end, much more saccharine. Like has a much more like, oh, you have to compromise in the end kind of an ending. Yeah, whereas this, the brutally uncompromising ending, that like the final scene, I don't know if people do read it, maybe we shouldn't talk about it, but I was like, wow, okay.
It's a very like anti-middle class kind of book, isn't it? It's it's got no truck with
no, and not just the boringness kind. Not just that what you said, that kind of that kind of lack of imagination, that sort of but then the rank hypocrisy flipping over to the there's that kind of string right near the end of the stories of Nellie, his Irish maid girlfriend, right, and her various abuses she suffered at the hands of middle class Christian men, in the home she's worked in, and it's like, yeah, it's pretty full on.
One wonders if she met Anonymous of My Victorian Life.
You would wonder. You would definitely wonder. Walter, I think his name was.
That's right.
That's a great book. That's one that what a weird thing to find, like in the Signet, whatever it was, edition that I found that in some bookshop in Japan. I was like, "Ooh, hang on, what's this?" I think I found it in Okinawa of all places. Yeah. Anyhow, yes. So to sum it up, probably not your best Machin to start with, but I quite enjoy this book for all of its weirdness and woolliness and kind of not quite, as you said, patchwork feeling. Yeah. There's enough really strong writing and enough, I think, boiling rage at the just grey, dreary, sober bullshit of life.
Yeah, if you find yourself
and I kind of want to play, what is it called, rocker, whatever the sport is that they describe.
I still don't quite know what rocker is.
Where there's a section of the pitch where if you absolutely step into it, somebody can choke you till you black out. There was that was awesome.
I mean, yeah, it's a book for if you feel yourself tipping over into becoming a Machin completist, I suppose. Then, yeah. Right. I think we're struggling to say so. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're out of here.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Do you have anything Welsh to say for us at the end here that to sign us off with?
Nakadu.